hugely emotional to be here today, only a few weeks from the anniversary of the referendum, and particularly here in this building, because 2 years ago, right here, we closed that year's Radical Independence Conference with what was then a controversial message. We said that independence wasn't about flags. It wasn't about how Scottish you felt. It wasn't about the SNP. It wasn't about manifestos or leaders. We said that independence is a class issue, and it was the rich who were voting no. And 2 years ago, some people harboured some doubts about that argument because it was only the Radical Independence Campaign who was making that argument. But today, I think everything is clear, everything is in focus, because the referendum was fundamentally about power and inequality. It was about a reckless, dominant elite, the Bullingdon Boys Club, who are sheltered from austerity, and us, the majority, suffering its effects. We had a different vision for Scotland. Our vision for Scotland, the Scotland for the millions and not the millionaires, has smashed apart that idea that there is no alternative. And I feel so proud to have been part of a movement that stood up for social justice in 2014. And 2 years on from that moment, having seen the rich and powerful close ranks, having watched the Scottish Labour Party spit on the memories of James Maxton and Keir Hardie, standing shoulder to shoulder with the police, having watched the banks and big business and international capital unite together behind Project Fear, 2 years on from that moment, I am still immensely proud of the panic our grassroots campaign spread amongst the highest tiers of the British establishment. And although we missed out by a narrow margin, the most important lesson that we learned simply can't be undone. How could we ever again be apathetic after experiencing the power of unity in action? How could we ever be silent after experiencing the power of a people's movement for change? How could we ever be silent now that we know what we know? Let me be clear, Scotland needs an anti-austerity movement now more than ever. And the Radical Independence Campaign will continue to be a radical campaign. It will remain out with the control of one political party. It will keep its autonomy because we are now ruled, have no doubt about it, we are now ruled by the most extreme, the most radically right-wing government in living memory. A government in Westminster that has in only 2 terms set about destroying anything that was left about progressiveness in the UK, destroying the NHS, the welfare state and the trade unions. But it's not just a matter of which of the 2 parties are in government, because there is something badly wrong with the system. And I think that problem will be even clearer if Jeremy Corbyn wins. Because like Colin, I feel for him as well. How long will he last with the Labour MPs who over the course of their political lives have voted against everything that someone like Jeremy Corbyn stands for? Now, we all know that Westminster is corrupt and that it is corrupting. But in the face of such an obvious truth, we cannot be blind to the urgent need for immediate change in our own society. And yesterday, I read an article in the Evening Times which had me in tears. And it told the story of a young woman in Clydebank who starves herself in order to feed her children. She told of how, once she'd paid the TV licence, the bills, and her food, she was left with just £3 in her pocket. But what really upset me wasn't the material hardship. It was when she said that she'd had to work really hard to overcome the sense of shame in asking for help. We live in a society that imposes poverty and ignores it at the same time. A society where governments encourage poverty because the poorer you are, the keener you'll be to work for less. And it's a society where being poor is where you're treated as being an inferior human being. And the Tory cuts and the right-wing media not only impose shame on those suffering poverty, they also force people to constantly have to choose between their own sense of shame and their real material desperation. But I'm not just upset, I am angry, because we all know that it's not the young woman from Clydebank who should ever feel any sense of shame. It's the utterly indifferent politicians in Holyrood and Westminster. It's the rich who buy opportunities for their own children through private education. It's the corporate leaders who earn millions but pay lower taxes than the migrant women workers who clean their offices. It is these people who should be ashamed. Austerity doesn't just rob us of economic security. It doesn't just rip up our democratic rights. It is designed to rob us of hope, to make day-to-day life ever more vulnerable and precarious. This is why, for me, Rise matters. With imagination and a bit of organisation, we can build a programme to confront the evils of poverty and inequality in our society now